a peacock who invented the cannon, a wolf who is literally death, a tiny tyrant who accidentally launched one of the biggest animated franchises ever made. DreamWorks spent the last 25 years building heroes we cheered for, but the characters we actually remember, the ones we quote, draw, and secretly root for, are the villains standing in their way. Some are terrifying. Some are hilarious. A few are so well written you almost forget they're the bad guy. These are 8 DreamWorks villains who turned out way too good for their own movies. Number 8. Lord Farquaad, the very first DreamWorks villain, set the tone for everything that came after, and he did it while being roughly the height of a fire hydrant. Lord Farquaad rules the painfully perfect kingdom of Duloc, a place so obsessively clean and orderly it feels like a theme park run by a control freak. He wants one thing: to become a real king, and the only way to do that is to marry a princess, which is why he sends an ogre off to fetch Fiona instead of risking his own neck. John Lithgow voices him with this oily, theatrical confidence, a tiny man who builds enormous castles and wears stacked armor to hide everything he's insecure about. That's the joke, and it's also the genius. Farquaad is a tyrant the size of a garden gnome, and the animators lean all the way in, framing him beside towering doorways and a ridiculously long bed just to remind you how small he feels inside. He banishes fairy tale creatures, interrogates a gingerbread man, and treats an entire magical population like vermin. For a comedy, that's genuinely nasty behavior. But he's so committed to the bit, so smug in his little throne room, that you almost want him to keep talking. When the dragon finally swallows him at the wedding, it lands as a punchline rather than a tragedy, because Farquaad was always a parody of every vain fairy tale prince rolled into one. He's not the scariest villain on this list, not by a mile. He's here because he proved something. DreamWorks could take the polished Disney formula and twist it into something sharper and funnier, and a great villain could carry that joke from start to finish. He became the blueprint, the smug little talker you can't quite bring yourself to hate, and the studio was just getting warmed up. Number 7. Eris, the goddess of chaos. Long before DreamWorks villains got this much love, one of the best was hiding in a movie almost nobody talks about: Sinbad. Legend of the Seven Seas was one of the studio's last great hand-drawn adventures, and its secret weapon is Eris, the goddess of discord, voiced by Michelle Pfeiffer. From her first appearance, she drifts through a swirling cosmic realm at the edge of the world, her hair and gown floating like she's permanently underwater, surrounded by monsters she built from the constellations themselves. She isn't after revenge or a throne. She just loves chaos for its own sake, pulling one tiny thread until an entire kingdom unravels, and she calls that destruction glorious. Pfeiffer plays her like a cat toying with a mouse, all silky amusement and bored cruelty, clearly relishing every second. Her plan is wickedly clever. She steals the magical Book of Peace, disguises herself as Sinbad to frame him, and counts on his best friend Proteus taking his place at the executioner's block, which would leave the city without an heir and tip the whole world into disorder. What makes her unforgettable is the trap she sets at the end. She offers Sinbad a deal sealed by her word as a goddess, a promise even she cannot break, betting that he's too much of a liar to keep his. "Are you a thief or a hero?" she asks him, fully expecting the thief to win. When he proves her wrong, you can see the fury cross her face, because the one thing chaos cannot stand is someone choosing to be good. She doesn't lose a big fight. She loses because a thief decided to become a hero. Eris barely gets talked about today, partly because her movie underperformed and partly because hand-drawn animation was on its way out. But the design, the voice, and that final battle of wits make her one of the most quietly brilliant antagonists the studio ever drew. She deserved a brighter spotlight. The next villain had the opposite problem. People remember him for everything he took away. Number 6. Drago Blodvist. How to Train Your Dragon built one of the warmest worlds in animation, full of flying lessons and gentle giant dragons, and then it introduced a man designed to break it. Drago Blodvist is a warlord wrapped in a cloak of dragonhide, voiced by Jimon Hounsou with a voice like distant thunder. He commands armies through brute force and rules a gigantic alpha dragon called a bewilderbeast, a creature the size of a mountain that he tortured into obedience from the time it was a hatchling. Drago doesn't want gold or glory. He wants control of every dragon on Earth, and then control of everyone else, and he believes the world owes him that because it once hurt him. Years earlier, he stood before a hall full of chieftains, promised them protection, and when they laughed at him, he burned them alive, leaving only Stoic to carry the memory. That's the man Hiccup tries to reason with. And here's where the film does something most kids' movies never dare. Hiccup walks up to this conqueror, certain that kindness can change anyone, and Drago simply refuses. He orders his bewilderbeast to seize control of Toothless, turns the gentlest dragon in the whole story into a weapon, and aims him at Hiccup. Stoic dives in front of the blast. Hiccup's father dies, killed by his own son's dragon, and Drago just smiles and walks away. It's one of the most genuinely shocking moments DreamWorks has ever animated. Drago isn't complicated or secretly sad. He's the opposite of everything Hiccup believes, living proof that not every enemy can be befriended, and that makes him terrifying in a way few animated villains manage. You don't love him the way you love the others on this list. You respect how completely he refuses to play along. Jimon Hounsoo reportedly recorded much of the role by actually screaming, and you can hear that raw, unhinged force in every threat he makes. Some villains make you laugh. This one made an entire generation of kids gasp in a movie theater. The next villain went the other direction entirely, and somehow made being pure evil hilarious. Number 5. Big Jack Horner. Almost every villain on this list comes with a tragic backstory. Big Jack Horner walks into Puss in Boots, The Last Wish, and throws that whole idea in the trash. He's a towering pastry chef turned crime lord, voiced by comedian John Mulaney, and he's hunting the same wishing star as Puss. Except his wish is to steal every scrap of magic in the world so that nobody else can have any. He carries an endless magic bag stuffed with legendary items. Excalibur, a phoenix, unicorn horns, the literal hand of King Midas, and he burns through priceless artifacts like disposable party favors. What makes him special is the joke at his core. When his accidental conscience, a tiny cricket the film calls the ethical bug, digs into his past hoping to find the wound that made him this way, Jack cheerfully explains that he had loving parents, a mansion, stability, and a thriving business to inherit. He calls all of it useless junk. There's no trauma, there's no excuse. He's just rotten, he knows it, and he finds the whole conversation a little annoying. He's the rare villain who is completely honest about being the villain. In a world of complicated, sympathetic bad guys, Big Jack Horner is refreshingly, gleefully simple. He even gets a running gag where he keeps losing henchmen to his own recklessness and shrugs that you can't bake a pie without losing a dozen men. Mulaney plays him like an overgrown toddler with unlimited power, swinging between giddy excitement and screaming tantrums, and it should not work as well as it does. By the end, his refusal to feel anything is exactly what unites every other character against him. When even the goddess of chaos would have more heart than you, the heroes will team up just to wipe that grin off your face. He's proof that a villain doesn't need a sad origin to be unforgettable. Sometimes pure, well-written evil is its own kind of fun. Number 4. Pitch Black. Rise of the Guardians gave us a Santa Claus with tattooed arms and a teenage Jack Frost, but its most fascinating character is the one lurking under the bed. Pitch Black is the boogeyman, voiced by Jude Law with a smooth, velvet menace that makes every threat sound like a lullaby. His plan is simple and chilling. He wants to snuff out hope across the whole world, turning children's golden dreams into galloping black nightmares. Because the more kids fear the dark, the stronger he grows. He sweeps through bedrooms as living shadow, corrupts the Sandman's dream sand, and slowly convinces children to stop believing in the Guardians one by one. On paper, that's a standard world-ending scheme. What lifts Pitch above it is why he does it. Centuries ago, people believed in the boogeyman and then they stopped, and he was left invisible and forgotten in the cold and the dark. All he truly wants is to be seen again. In the film's best scene, he stands across from Jack Frost, another spirit nobody can see, and admits that he knows exactly what it feels like to be cast out, to long for a family, to spend years certain that no one else understands. For a moment, the villain and the hero are the same lonely person. The difference is the choice. Jack wants to be believed in. Pitch decides that if he can't be loved, he'll settle for being feared. That single decision is his undoing, because fear is a cage, and in the end, his own nightmares turn on him and drag him back into the dark. Jude Law earned an awards nomination for a performance that's equal parts terrifying and heartbreaking. And the animators gave Pitch this elegant, shadow-stitched design that feels like a nightmare you almost feel sorry for. He's the villain who could have been a hero, if only someone had believed in him first. The next one believed he should have been a hero, and never forgave the world for choosing somebody else. Number 3. Tai Lung, the first Kung Fu panda, gave its hero a goofy, dumpling-loving panda, and gave its villain something the franchise would return to again and again, a broken heart hiding underneath all the muscle. Tai Lung is a snow leopard voiced by Ian McShane, and he is by any measure a Kung Fu prodigy. Abandoned as a cub, he was taken in by Master Shifu and raised like a son, trained until he could defeat almost anyone alive. He was promised the world. Everyone, including Shifu, believed he was destined to become the legendary dragon warrior. And then, at the final moment, Master Oogway looked into his heart, saw the hunger there, and refused him the honor. Tai Lung snapped. He tore through the valley in a rage, and for that he was locked away in the deepest prison in China, chained in the dark for 20 years with nothing but his bitterness for company. The movie opens his story with one of the great escape sequences in all of animation, as he breaks free of a mountain fortress guarded by 1,000 soldiers and walks out completely unstoppable. Here's the part that stings. When he finally faces Shifu again, the old master admits he's sorry, that his own pride twisted the student he loved. Tai Lung doesn't want an apology. He wants the scroll he was promised, the recognition he spent his entire life chasing. McShane plays him with this wounded, seething dignity, a warrior who is genuinely the best at what he does and cannot understand why that was never enough. He's terrifying, but you understand him completely, because almost everyone knows the feeling of working for something and watching it handed to someone else. He loses not to a better fighter, but to a panda who never wanted greatness and got it anyway, which is the cruelest twist of all. Tai Lung set the template, and the sequel took that template and built something even sadder and grander. Number 2. Lord Shen. If you only know one DreamWorks villain by name, there's a good chance it's this one. Lord Shen is the white peacock at the center of Kung Fu Panda 2, voiced by Gary Oldman, and a lot of fans call him one of the finest animated villains ever drawn. Picture it. A villain who isn't a hulking beast or a brawny bull, but a slender, elegant bird in flowing silk robes, gliding through the conquered halls of Gongmin City, flinging blades hidden in his own feathers. Shen was born a prince, heir to a throne his loving parents promised him. But he grew obsessed with the destructive potential of his family's fireworks, dreaming of turning festival sparklers into cannons. Worried, his parents asked a soothsayer about his future, and she warned that if he kept down this path, he would be defeated by a warrior of black and white. So Shen made a choice that still casts a shadow over the entire franchise. To cheat the prophecy, he led his wolf army into a village of pandas and tried to wipe every last one of them out. He came home expecting praise. Instead, he found his parents staring at him in horror, and they banished him forever. Everything that follows, the 30 years of plotting, the canon, the war on Kung Fu itself, all of it grows from a child who couldn't stand to be unloved and decided to make the world afraid of him instead. The brilliance of Shen is that he's genuinely tragic and completely unforgivable at the very same time. He committed a massacre, and he's also a hurt little boy who never healed. In the final battle, Po offers him peace, a real chance to let go of the past. Shen tries to kill him one last time, then watches his own cannon topple toward him, and simply closes his eyes and lets it fall. Gary Oldman gives him this brittle, wounded fury, and the animation turns every gesture into elegant menace. He's the villain fans beg the studio to honor with his own holiday, and somehow he's still only number 2. Number 1. Death, the wolf, in Puss in Boots, The Last Wish. Our hero learns he's burned through 8 of his 9 lives, and that night, while he's hiding from the truth in a quiet bar, he hears a whistle. That whistle belongs to the greatest villain DreamWorks has ever created. He shows up calling himself a bounty hunter, a towering wolf in a black cloak with twin sickles and eyes that glow red when he gets excited. Voiced by Wagner Moura, he stalks Puss through the entire film, and his first real conversation strips away any doubt about who he is. He isn't a metaphor. He isn't symbolic. He looks Puss dead in the eye and says he's death, straight up, and he has come for him. Here's what makes him perfect. He isn't after money or power or a throne. He's here because Puss spent 8 lives laughing in the face of death, treating something sacred like a joke, and the wolf finds that genuinely offensive. He's a force of nature with a personal grudge, and he loves his work, leaning in close to tell Puss how much he adores the smell of fear. For a cat who built his entire legend on never being afraid of anything, coming face to face with the one thing he secretly feared is the scariest mirror imaginable. That eerie whistle, 8 notes long for the 8 lives already gone, sends the legendary swordsman into pure panic, something no DreamWorks villain had ever pulled off. But the reason he tops this list is the ending. When Puss finally stops running, draws his sword, and admits that he wants to live, the wolf does something none of the others would. He respects it. He came for an arrogant legend who thought he was immortal, and he doesn't see that creature anymore. So he lowers his blades, tells Puss to live this life well, and walks away whistling a gentler tune, promising they'll meet again one day. He's terrifying, honorable, funny, and oddly comforting all at once. A villain who turns out to be the very lesson the whole movie was teaching. DreamWorks didn't just write a great bad guy. They made Death himself into someone you'd follow into a spin-off, so that's the case. From a tiny tyrant in a spotless castle to the literal Grim Reaper in a wolf's cloak, DreamWorks kept doing the same quietly daring thing. They poured their best writing, their boldest designs, and their most famous voices into the characters who were supposed to lose. A peacock haunted by his parents, a snow leopard robbed of his destiny, a boogeyman who only wanted to be seen. They became more interesting than the heroes because they were allowed to be human, even when they were birds and wolves and gods. If you want more deep dives into the characters hiding inside your favorite animated worlds, subscribe and stick around. There's a video on your screen right now breaking down another one. Go watch it, and we'll see you in the next story.